in July 24, 2023. North Korea launched two short-range ballistic missiles that landed in the sea near its eastern coast, specifically in the Sea of Japan. Japan's Coast Guard warned ships to stay away from the afflicted areas. Meanwhile, South Korea announced the arrival of two American nuclear submarines, which military experts described as a dangerous escalation. What exactly is happening? And what led to this escalation? Let's have beautiful cup of tea paper and the pen and let's talk about 38th parallel. I am Taha, just like book says. On July 18, 2023, for the first time since the 1980s, the American nuclear submarine USS Kentucky arrived at the port of Busan in South Korea, located about 329 kilometers from the capital. Seoul. This was a significant show of force against the perceived advanced military threats from North Korea. Shortly after, the South Korean Navy reported the arrived of another American nuclear submarine USS Annapolis. And these two submarines, my friend, are of the ballistic missile submarines type. Right, and what about North Korea? Let me tell you that North Korea launched its third batch of short-range ballistic missiles as a form of intimidation under the name of weapon tests. So what are these missiles? IL-2 missiles reached a range of 400 kilometers before falling into the sea. You might say this is typical for North Korea. For example, last year they launched over 100 missiles. If you look into the matter a bit more, you will find that the arrival of these submarines to South Korea is part of U.S. President Joe Biden's initiative to South Korean President last April, which called the Regular Appearance Declaration. The U.S. military is showing its presence toward South Korea as delivering a piece of weaponry to South Korea and boasting about it, claiming that South Korea belongs to them while they possess this mighty weapon, and then they retreat again. America is flexing its muscles, supporting his allies and threatening his enemies. So what's new? The tightening of the Korea Peninsula's division. Let us remember that the ceasefire date was on July 27. 1953. The most significant tightening there is the incident of the American soldiers' defection and crossing the border between the Koreas, and we will talk about this in a little while. The result was North Korean Defense Minister Kang Sun-nam issuing a statement that the deployment of U.S. strategy assets, including a nuclear-armed submarine, meets our standards for the use of nuclear weapons. So you have given us a reason that would make us use nuclear weapons if something happened, and this is not my statement, it's what Russians RT said. Let's start from the very beginning and go back to the days just before the surrender of the Japan Empire to the Allies in World War II. November 27, 1943. Cairo Conference. President Roosevelt met with British Prime Minister Churchill and Chinese President Chiang Kai-shek. They issued the Cairo Declaration recognizing the independence of the Korea Peninsula. After the war, two American military leaders met in Korea, Dean Rush and Charles Bonesteel. It was not a literal meeting. They brought a map produced by National Geographic for the Korean Peninsula. So what was the purpose of the meeting, Taha? It was about controlling the Korea Peninsula in exchange for fearing Soviet advancement. In other words, the Americans were afraid that the Soviet Union would advance and control the Korean Peninsula. So, the solution was to divide it between them and the Soviets when the leaders found no natural or artificial barriers separating the Koreas. They drew a dividing line along the 38th parallel. The solution was that the South surrenders to the Americans and the North surrenders to the Soviet This way any progress from the Soviet side would be monitored and controlled. But as usual, any intervention in defining the borders any country leads to a civil war immediately, and that's what happened on June 25, 1950, the Korean Civil War. The Koreas clashed with each other, more precisely, American and the Soviet Union. The situation began with accusations from the South that the North sank a South Korean warship. The North responded with a full invasion of the South, supported by China and the Soviet Union. The South defended itself. The support of the United Nations, led by whom? The United States of America. Over 3 million Koreans, 1 million Chinese and 58,000 Americans among others lost their lives in this war, and this is not my statement, it's from the World Economic Forum. Do you understand how many souls were lost there? And these people are all holding peace conferences. No comment. Anyway, let's get back of Soviet communism. Known as the Red Scare, prompted the United States to surround and support the South with industrialization and globalization. On the other hand, the Soviet Union expanded its influence in the North, and this dividing line learned into real borders between two completely different countries. The South became more like the American globalization, while the North became more like Soviet communism, and between them lies the 38th parallel. The Civil War ended with the signing of the Armistice Agreement in 1953. However, it was more like a 70-year-long ceasefire than a true resolution, as it led to the separation of the two. Continued the area between them, known as the demilitarized zone, is the largest minefield in the world. As for a story of the American soldier, let me tell you that the whole story is behind this line. Travis King, a 23-year-old American scout soldier, serves in the United States Army stationed in South Korea. He caused damage to a police car, insulted officers, engaged in rowdy behavior, and received a fine of $4,000. He didn't know how to pay the fine, so he was imprisoned for 48 days in South Korea. After his release, he was supposed to board the plane and return to America, where he would be stripped of his rank and face further punishment. On July 18 he arrived at the airport and began the customs procedures. However, just one day before his departure, he booked a tourist trip with Captivate Company to the demilitarized zone between the Koreas, a region where weapons are prohibited. While on the tour, he disappeared after crossing into the North Korean side by boarding a truck. This incident heightened tension between both Korea and the United States, especially since the United States spent 4 days trying to contact North Korea, but no one responded. In the end, British General Andrew Harrison announced that communications had begun with North Korea regarding the defector soldier, and this is not my statement, it's from The Guardian, the British newspaper. Despite this incident being a regular occurrence for a defector soldier, all parties are waiting for a sign. North Korea won't easily hand him over, and at the same time the United States is taking its time, hoping that being a military man without significant knowledge of the army would lead North Korean leaders to abandon him easily. However, the example of its soldiers to enemy countries portrays North Korea in a negative light. The result was an escalation. Let me tell you that this escalation has been going on for a while. Let me give you an example. In December of the previous years, the White House claimed that North Korea was supplying Wagner Group with weapons for use in its war against Ukraine. Additionally, there were reports of arms and ammunition being sent to Moscow in exchange for sugar. Despite international sanctions imposed on North Korea to compel it to abandon its nuclear program, North Korea sees its nuclear arsenal as a deterrent, preventing the United States from invading the country, much like when the U.S. dropped nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is not my statement. It's Bloomberg Network's statement. Interesting, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, North Korea is receiving foreign DA copyright LA copyright gations to celebrate the anniversary of the armistice with the first foreign delegation led by Sergei Shoigu, Russia's Minister of Defense. This visit is expected to strengthen military relations between Russia and North Korea. North Korea is an important partner. In conclusion, the old conflict between North and South Korea has not been definitively resolved even after approximately 78 years. The struggle continues, periodically renewing itself in different forms. And global alliances for a potential Third World War are being drawn. The situation remains complex and unpredictable, and only hope for a peaceful resolution. It was a pleasure having your attention. See you soon.